World systems theory, a multidisciplinary, macro-scale approach to world history and social change, emphasizes the world system as the primary unit of social analysis. World system refers to the interregional and transnational division of labor, which divides the world into core countries, semi-periphery countries, and the periphery countries. Core countries focus on higher skill, capital-intensive production, and the rest of the world focuses on low-skill, labor-intensive production and extraction of raw materials. This constantly reinforces the dominance of the core countries. Nonetheless, the system has dynamic characteristics, in part as a result of revolutions in transport technology, and individual states can gain or lose their core status over time. For a time, some countries become the world hegemon. During the last few centuries, as the world system has extended geographically and intensified economically, this status has passed from the Netherlands to the United Kingdom and to the United States of America. Background: Emanuel Wallerstein has developed the best-known version of world systems analysis, beginning in the 1970s. Wallerstein traces the rise of the capitalist world economy from the long 16th century. The rise of capitalism, in his view, was an accidental outcome of the protracted crisis of feudalism. Europe used its advantages and gained control over most of the world economy and presided over the development and spread of industrialization and capitalism, capitalist economy, indirectly resulting in international inequality, unequal development. Though other commentators refer to Wallerstein's project as world systems theory, he consistently rejects that term. For Wallerstein, world systems analysis is, above all, a mode of analysis that aims to transcend the structures of knowledge inherited from the 19th century, including, especially, the divisions within the social sciences, and between the social sciences and history. For Wallerstein, then, world systems analysis is a knowledge movement that seeks to discern the totality of what has been paraded under the labels of the human sciences, and indeed well beyond. We must invent a new language, Wallerstein insists, to transcend the illusions of the three supposedly distinctive arenas of society, economy and politics. The Trinitarian structure of knowledge is grounded in another, even grander, modernist architecture, the alienation of biophysical worlds from social ones. One question, therefore, is whether we will be able to justify something called social science in the 21st century as a separate sphere of knowledge. Many other scholars have contributed significant work in this knowledge movement. Origins, influences and the major thinkers. World systems theory traces emerged in the 1970s. Its roots can be found in sociology, but it has developed into a highly interdisciplinary field. World systems theory was aiming to replace modernization theory. Wallerstein criticized modernization theory for these reasons: its focus on the nation-state as the only unit of analysis, its assumption that there is only a single path of evolutionary development for all countries, its disregard of transnational structures that constrain local and national development. Three major predecessors of world systems theory are the Annales school, Marxism and dependence theory. The Annales school tradition influenced Wallerstein in focusing on long-term processes and geo-ecological regions as unit of analysis. Marxism added a stress on social conflict, a focus on the capital accumulation process and competitive class struggles, a focus on a relevant totality, the transitory nature of social forms, and a dialectical sense of motion through conflict and contradiction. World systems theory was also significantly influenced by dependency theory, a neo-Marxist explanation of development processes. Other influences on the world systems theory come from scholars such as Karl Polanyi, Nikolai Kondrashov and Joseph Schumpeter. Wallerstein sees the development of the capitalist world economy as detrimental to a large proportion of the world's population. Wallerstein views the period since the 1970s as an age of transition that will give way to a future world system whose configuration cannot be determined in advance. World systems thinkers include Samir Amin, Giovanni Arrighi, André Gunder Frank, and Emanuel Wallerstein, with major contributions by Christopher Chase Duns, Beverly Silver, Volker Bornshire, Janet Abu-Luckad, Thomas D. Hall, Cooney Bear Raffa, Theotonia dos Santos, Dale Tomac, Jason W. Moore and others. In sociology, a primary alternative perspective is world polity theory, as formulated by John W. Meyer. Dependency theory world systems analysis builds upon but also differs fundamentally from dependency theory. While accepting world inequality, the world market and imperialism as fundamental features of a historical capitalism, Wallerstein broke with orthodox dependency theory's central proposition. For Wallerstein, core countries do not exploit poor countries for two basic reasons. Firstly, core capitalists exploit workers in all zones of the capitalist world economy and therefore, the crucial redistribution between core and periphery is surplus value, not wealth or resources, abstractly conceived. Secondly, core states do not exploit poor states, as dependency theory proposes. Because capitalism is organized around an interregional and transnational division of labor rather than an international division of labor. During the Industrial Revolution, for example, English capitalists exploited slaves in the cotton zones of the American South, a peripheral region within a semi-peripheral country, United States. From a largely Weberian perspective, Fernando Enrique Cardoso described the main tenets of dependency theory as follows. There is a financial and technological penetration of the periphery and semi-periphery countries by the developed capitalist core countries. That produces an unbalanced economic structure within the peripheral societies and between them and the central countries. That leads to limitations upon self-sustained growth in the periphery. That helps the appearance of specific patterns of class relations. They require modifications in the role of the state to guarantee the functioning of the economy and the political articulation of a society, which contains, within itself, foci of inarticulateness and structural imbalance. Dependency and world system theory propose that the poverty and backwardness of poor countries are caused by their peripheral position in the international division of labor. Since the capitalist world system evolved, the distinction between the central and the peripheral nations has grown and diverged. In recognizing a tripartite pattern in division of labor, world systems analysis criticized dependency theory with its bimodal system of only cores and peripheries. Emanuel Wallerstein. The best-known version of the world systems approach has been developed by Emanuel Wallerstein. Wallerstein notes that world systems analysis calls for an unidisciplinary historical social science and contends that the modern disciplines, products of the 19th century, are deeply flawed because they are not separate logics, as is manifest for example in the de facto overlap of analysis among scholars of the disciplines. Wallerstein offers several definitions of a world system, defining it in 1974 briefly. A system is defined as a unit with a single division of labor and multiple cultural systems. He also offered a longer definition. A social system, one that has boundaries, structures, member groups, rules of legitimation, and coherence. Its life is made up of the conflicting forces which hold it together by tension and tear it apart as each group seeks eternally to remold it to its advantage. It has the characteristics of an organism, in that it has a lifespan over which its characteristics change in some respects and remain stable in others. One can define its structures as being at different times strong or weak in terms of the internal logic of its functioning. In 1987, Wallerstein again defined it, not the system of the world, but a system that is a world and which can be, most often has been, located in an area less than the entire globe. World systems analysis argues that the units of social reality within which we operate, whose rules constrain us, are for the most part such world systems. World systems analysis argues that there have been thus far only two varieties of world systems: world economies and world empires. A world empire are large bureaucratic structures with a single political center and an axial division of labor, but multiple cultures. A world economy is a large axial division of labor with multiple political centers and multiple cultures. In English, the hyphen is essential to indicate these concepts. World system, without a hyphen, suggests that there has been only one world system in the history of the world. Wallerstein characterizes the world system as a set of mechanisms, which redistributes surplus value from the periphery to the core. In his terminology, the core is the developed, industrialized part of the world, and the periphery is the underdeveloped, typically raw materials exporting, poor part of the world, the market being the means by which the core exploits the periphery. Apart from them, Wallerstein defines four temporal features of the world system. Cyclical rhythms represent the short-term fluctuation of economy, and secular trends mean deeper long-run tendencies, such as general economic growth or decline. The term contradiction means a general controversy in the system, usually concerning some short-term versus long-term trade-offs. For example, the problem of underconsumption, wherein the driving down of wages increases the profit for capitalists in the short term, but in the long term, the decreasing of wages may have a crucially harmful effect by reducing the demand for the product. The last temporal feature is the crisis. A crisis occurs if a constellation of circumstances brings about the end of the system. In Wallerstein's view, there have been three kinds of historical systems across human history: mini-systems, or what anthropologists call bands, tribes, and small chiefdoms, and two types of world systems, one that is politically unified and the other is not. World systems are larger, and ethnically diverse. Modernity is unique in being the first and only fully capitalist world economy to have emerged around 1450 to 1550 and to have geographically expanded across the entire planet. By about 1900, not being politically unified, many political units are included within the world system, loosely tied together in an interstate system. Efficient division of labor is the unifying element of the different units, and it is also a function of capitalism, a system based on competition between free producers using free labor with free commodities. Free, meaning available for sale and purchase on a market. More specifically, it can be described as focusing on endless accumulation of capital. In other words, accumulation of capital in order to accumulate more capital. Such capitalism has a mutually dependent relationship with the world economy since it provides the efficient division of labor, the unifying element of the world economy, through the process of accumulating wealth. Likewise, such capitalism is dependent on the world economy since the latter provides a large market in a multiplicity of states, enabling capitalists to choose to work with states helping their interests. Research questions. World systems theory asks several key questions. How is the world system affected by changes in its components? How does it affect its components? To what degree, if any, does the core need the periphery to be underdeveloped? What causes world systems to change? What system may replace capitalism? Some questions are more specific to certain subfields. For example, Marxists would concern themselves whether world systems theory is a useful or unhelpful development of Marxist theories.